Okay, we use this video to do a more detailed, hopefully a little bit more practical example of VBA. And again, I don't expect you to get this. This is optional. This is just something so that you're aware of, but it allows you to have a lot of control over your data that maybe you can't see it using formula, but you can sometimes use code to cut your data, to manipulate your data also. So here's a fairly common problem where a lot of times we're giving summary data. Essentially, we're given data that's already been pivoted, like in a pivot table, and this is it. And really, this is if that's the only thing that you have to do is display this data, that's great. But sometimes you want to do something else with it. And usually in a database world, we like to see data more in this format where our data are in rows. So really, if I start with this, I would like to be able to move it back to this form where you can see I've got a total of 60 records because I got 12 months. I've got 5 years of data. And I want to do is put 29, 41, 42. I wanted 29, 41, 42. I want this to be 9, 42, 54. I want this to be all the first year for 12 months. And then the next year for 12 months, and this just goes 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way to 12, and then starting this, it repeats. So I want to write code that will generate these numbers. Now I could probably do it with a copy-paste and get done with these 60 data points pretty quickly, but if this was a real large table, pivot table, with a lot of rows and a lot of columns, that is a pain. And you might be able to do it with offset functions. In fact, I think you probably could. But let me show you how you can do it using some code. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to record a macro. Just again, I like to use that as a starting point. So all I'm going to do is go under Developer, record a macro. It's macro 3. We'll call it dpivot. So I'm going to move away from a pivot table to more to the a record format. And again, all I'm going to do, I'm going to grab this, copy, paste special, or paste it. And that's it. That's all I'm going to do, just so I have a placeholder. And let's look at that macro. It's this one right here. All right, well, I'm not even going to use any of that, but at least it gave me a place. And now I'm going to delete this. Scroll down a little bit. Let's put some space bars in here. And first thing I'm going to do is what I want to do is loop through every year, and then within each year we'll loop through every month. So I'm actually going to loop over 5 times and then over 12 times. And the code is already right there. That's the code I'm going to write. But so for I, and this is just a variable that's going to change its value. So this is a for loop. For I equals 1 to 5. And somewhere down here at the bottom, I'm going to put next I. So whatever I write in this code is going to happen 5 times. I is going to be equal to 1. And it goes through, and after it finishes, it gets to the bottom, then it sets I equal to 2. So it'll loop through this for loop 5 times. Well, what I'm going to do now is within every year, I'm going to change and have a different variable for j equals 1 to 12. And that's the other part. So this is a nested loop. I have 2 for loops I'm going to nest through. Now what code am I going to write? Well, what I'm going to do is set a value. I'm going to look at this value which starts in cell C12, and I want to grab this 1. So range C12. This is how you do it in Visual Basic, how you reference a particular cell. Now, as I loop through this value changes. So what I'm going to do is actually offset as a function of I and j and a little bit of other stuff. So 12 times I minus 1 plus j minus 1. So look what's going to happen. Well, let me finish it up. And the column, I'm not going to have any offset off the column. It's always just going to be in that column C. And then the value of that. So range C12, some offset formulas, and then the value is just going to be equal to I. So look what happens when the very first one, when I is equal to 1 and j is equal to 1, because that's how they both begin. I is 1, j is 1. So I minus 1, so 1 minus 1 is 0 multiplied by 12, that's 0, plus j minus 1, which j is equal to 1, so 0 plus 0, so there's no offset. So it's going to put the value right in cell C12. It's going to put a 1 because I is equal to 1. Do the same thing. The next column over, and then it's where I reference and then there's no column offset. This is everything in column D, and its value is going to be equal to j, so this is going to be the month. And then the last one is that where I'm actually going to grab my demand, which is in column E, and I'm starting in row 12. So that means this value E12, I need to put a value, and its value no offset in columns. And this is trick. What is its value going to be? Well, what I want to grab is this value. And I'm going to do it a little bit different. I'm actually going to anchor off of cell, I'm going to anchor off cell D3. So starting with range, and then grab the cell D3, and then I'm going to offset I and j minus 1 as a function of I and j, but it's I minus 1 in my row and j minus 1 in my column. And that's, so its value is going to be whatever is in that value. And that's it. Whoops, I deleted too much. So let's minimize this, or make this where you can see what was happening as we run through it. And I'll make sure you can see what we're doing. So let me clear this out so there's nothing there. And I'm just going to step into it. I'm going to step into this code. Whoop, that was supposed to say next J. There. Sorry. Okay. Now let's step into it. And the function key 8 will step into it. So now I is equal to 1, j is equal to 1. So this value is, and if I hover over it, it'll actually give me the values. So there's where that 1 just popped in. Now the next one, I is equal to 1, so this is all going to be 0. So you can see that pops in, and there's the 29. And now it's going to go to the next j. So now j is equal to 2. So this is going to be 0 plus 2 minus 1, 1. So one row down is equal to I, which is still 1. So that's, it put it in this row. It put I. Now it grabbed j, and it grabbed the 41. It grabbed this one. And as I just step through it, you can see what it does. Now what happens when you get to the end of this year? So now we go to, so this is now, we've done December. Now we get to the next one. So now I is equal to 2 and j is back equal to 1. So I is equal to 2. So now we get 2 minus 1, or 1 times 12. 12 plus 0. So this, that's where this 2 comes from. we're offsetting that many 12 rows from this, and we get back to the first month, and now we ought to get 95, just like that. And I can go ahead and run it all the way through. Just finish running it. There you go. It put all the numbers, populated all the way down by running this code. And just like before, now that I've got that code written, I could go to Developer and go to Insert, put a form, put a button out there, assign it to this dpivot, and then let's say these numbers change. This is now 100. Let's make the last, or let's do this one, make it equal to 0, and I hit this, and it ran it really fast, but you can see now the number's different. This is, where's that 1,000? There's that 1,000, which had happened in the second year, the 11th month, which is what that is. So that's just an introduction to what you have as part of Excel. You have access to a language called VBA. There's tons of books on VBA. It allows you to really do a lot of data manipulation using the sheets and the offsets and cell referencing. If you can think like a program, computer, this is a strong thing to add to your skill set. Thanks.